Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's episode of the Coverlet of Comfort. Before I start with the stitching, I just wanted to show you these. These needles were sent to me by Jenny in the States, and she bought them, or I believe her husband bought them for her in a crafting thrift shop. You can see they came like this, and I've got one threaded to stitch with. And they're boys needles, B-O-Y-E, from a company that's based in Chicago. But on the packet they said made in England, so she messaged me asking me if I knew anything about them, and I didn't, so I asked Auntie Google, and apparently for a very brief period in the early 1900s the needles were made in England and imported to the US. And then I think around 1910, I don't remember exactly, the needles started being manufactured in the States. So it's very possible that these needles, because they said made in England, are 100 years old. So anyway, Jenny sent me two. This one's still got a little bit of thread in that she was stitching with. And then there was an empty one which I've threaded up with my thread for the stitching I want to do today. So I'm going to use it on my comfort cloth. So thank you, Jenny. That was a precious little gift. I should just put those there. So this week, this is our last week officially in January of stitching on the first square, or the first section. Like I said last time, there's no reason why we can't carry on stitching on the previous months while we start to work on the new months. But what I wanted to put on this was some of the blanket stitch that we did, if you were following the stitch journal last year, the week that we did comfort cloth. So I think I'm going to just do some blanket stitch around the outside of my circle and connect it. It's also known as honeycomb stitch. So I'm just going to start doing that and see where I get to. The only thing is, I'll just reiterate, if you haven't yet, I'm not going to stitch out right to the very edge. I'm going to leave, I hope I'm holding it in the right place, I'm going to leave a good ½ inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch unstitched. I don't think I'll get anywhere near there because I've got quite a long way to go, but you know, just as a tip for when we come to join. So I think I'll start, where shall I start? I'll just start, doesn't really matter. I'll start here on this blue section. I'm wearing a skirt. Often you ask about what I'm wearing. I don't know if you can see it. I didn't make it or embroider it. I bought it in a charity shop, I think about 10 years ago or something. But it's cotton and it's got this lovely embroidery on, and they're not chiches, they're plastic basically. But anyway, I just love it. I've sewn a couple of these back on recently because they do start hanging off. So that's my skirt. Okay, I'm really sorry. I just went to edit the video and I realised that for most of it you couldn't see what I was doing. So I've come back to show you the basics of the stitching that I'm doing, and I'll insert that near the beginning so that you can see if you don't know how to do it. I didn't want to reshoot the whole thing because, you know, it was 50 minutes of me wittering, and yeah, I think after you've seen the beginning and what I'm doing, most of you don't watch anymore anyway, you only listen and do your own thing. So I hope that's okay. I really apologise. So basic blanket stitch, I'm just going to do it here to show you. Let's do it here where it's a bit darker. I did a basic blanket stitch all the way around the edge of my circle first, and then I'm going back to do the honeycomb. So basic blanket stitch, you come up on your cloth, and I haven't put a knot in so I can pull it out afterwards, and then you go along a bit and down, and if you visualise a triangle, I think that's the easiest way. So you go along and down, and I say a bit because I deliberately make them all different sizes when I'm doing this. And when you come up, you want to make sure that your thread is trapped under your needle like that, so that you get that L shape. So then you come across again and down, and again, like I said, I vary the spacing between the stitching and the length of the legs and so on. So I could do a really small one, I could even angle it in a bit if I wanted, so it's not completely straight. And I might do a super long one and angle it the other way. So I hope you can now see. what I'm doing. So that's the basic blanket stitch. So I did that first all the way around the outside. You see here where that's all that's happened. Hopefully I'm now holding it in the right place. I'm so sorry. All the way around the outside, and they're all wonky and different lengths, and you know, deliberately. So I'll pull that out of there. Right, so that's your first pass, your foundation. It's just a regular blanket stitch, or an irregular blanket stitch, but you know what I mean. And then to do the next round and subsequent rounds, you come, you look at your 2 previous legs. Actually, I'll do 1 stitch first. So to do the next round and subsequent rounds, you come up, you know, it would just be the same if I was just starting. You just come up in the cloth, and then I use the eye of the needle to go through the leg of the next stitch, like that. And then to make my next blanket stitch, I come down somewhere between the leg I've just gone under and the next leg. So I kind of bisect those with my eye, and then I come down a bit. And then when you come up, you want to make sure that you come up lower than those 2 legs. And pull through again with your loop underneath. And there, because I'm lower, when I come back up now to thread my eye of my needle under the next leg, that stitch makes this nice little V shape. If I came up in line with them, I'd get a straight line across, which I think is less pleasing. But you know, you can experiment if you like on a scrap, and just see what you like the look of. If you haven't done it before, maybe you might want to have a little practice. So under the leg with the eye, and then take the blanket stitch, making sure you stay lower than the 2 legs. And it's that gives it the honeycomb effect. It's not actually a honeycomb because it's more of a pentagon the first round, but when you do subsequent rounds it will be a honeycomb, because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you'll have 5, 6. So back to the video and the wittering. You can't see me, well you can see me, but you can't see what I'm stitching. I really apologise. I'll do better next time. Thank you so much for your patience. Well, the wind has finally dropped. If you watched Monday's video, which I recorded on Sunday, the wind was plain to hear in the background. It's Storm Eowyn. It's went on for quite some time, and we didn't have it as bad here as some parts of the UK. I know some parts of Scotland and Ireland were without power. I think some parts are still without power. I'm not completely sure. Down here in the southwest of England, we just had, well, we had thunder and rain, and yeah, it was quite windy, but not to the same degree. I think they recorded 115 miles an hour or something like that in Ireland. I think it was the strongest wind since records began. So there's been quite a lot of damage. But I said in Monday's video that I felt a bit out of sorts, and a few people mentioned in the comments that that might be because of the wind, and I think they're probably right. It can have that effect on you, can't it? The wind can make you a bit cross for no apparent reason. Not cross, but agitated. And I've also been thinking about February, our next section, and I intended my theme from the very beginning to be home, because I've started with self, and I think the idea is that I'm kind of radiating out in terms of putting ourselves at the centre, and then what's the first thing that's around ourselves is our home. But I've also been thinking about what that might mean. Whether it's a this is quite... This cloth here has been quite resistant for some reason. Sorry, the cloth interrupted me. You know what that might mean to each of us, probably different things to different people. And I think for me, having moved recently, and particularly since it was from a place that I thought was my, you know, people talk about forever homes. So thank you for those, Jenny. Like I said, I think they'll be lovely for piecing and for stitching with finer thread. I'm going to put that back in its little place with its friend, and I want to do something with this little bit of thread. I don't know what yet. I'll just stitch it into something, or maybe I'll stitch it into this. I wonder if I can, sorry, excuse me, I hope that my arm going that way doesn't make the camera go blurry. It's a tiny bit. It's a tiny bit, Jenny. You're like me, you stitch right to the very end of your thread. Oh, I think what I'll do is, where shall I put it? I think I'm going to put it just off to the side of, in my little heart. So I'm coming through from the front, I haven't put any knots or anything. And it's as if I was tying when you tie a quilt. So I've come through, I want to leave one of the tails long, or longish, and try not to unthread it, and then I'm just coming through, back up, a little distance away, hardly any distance, and then get the needle off, put it back safe in its little purple holder. I wonder if that's what you were stitching, Jenny, with this thread. It's the same colour, I think. And then I'll just get them, and this is basically how you tie a quilt. You know, if you didn't want to quilt a quilt, you could just, at various places, you just come through like this and then you tie a knot. I want to tie a double knot, I can't see very well. Oh no, I've missed both the strands. Talk amongst yourselves while I sort my bit of thread out. I have to concentrate apparently. There we go, I've done one. And two. There we go. And I'll just leave them dangling like that. There. I like that. It's just a little way to just save that precious bit of thread in the corner of my heart. Do you see? I'm afraid woolly heart. Right, so let me have a sip of my tea, which is here behind me. So yeah, again, what was I saying? And yes, about home. And I think it can mean many things to many people, and many things to the same people at the same time, maybe, you know, or at different times. Am I making sense? It can be your people, your family, your loved ones, your, you know. There was that song in the 80s, was it an old song that he covered? What was he called? Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home. I think it was an old song. Paul, you're all shouting at me. Can't remember his surname. My head's saying Paul Weller. I know it's not Paul Weller because he was in the Jam. Paul, oh, it'll come to me. Anyway, there was a song called Wherever I Lay My Hat, That's My Home. And it was about, you know, it was actually, I liked his voice and I liked that song until when I was about 17, I think. Oh, I nearly had his surname then, but it went again. Till I was about, when I was about 17, a boyfriend of mine, whose name I can't even remember, that's how important he was, dumped me to that song. So after that I hated it. Anyway, yeah, but because it was about a rakish chap who, you know, went about the place. Rakish, feckless. Feckless, my granny would have called him. Yeah, it's funny how songs we associate, don't we, with events, good or bad. I should have got my sewing table. I did think of it, but it's got all stuff on it, and I couldn't be bothered to get all the stuff off. Keep my scissors on my lap. And in a minute I'll be going, where are my scissors? And you'll have to shout at me, they're on your lap. Yeah, he was not a nice boy. I hope he's improved with age, for whatever woman he's ended up with. Anyway, you know, the one that dumped me to the song by Paul, whatever his name was. Wherever I lay my hat, that's my home. But in a sense, it kind of is true in a way for some of us. I'm just going to stitch over my granny's shawl fringing here, I think, and just see what happens. I'm taking quite a big stitch. Don't really like the fringe being between. There we go, that's alright, that'll do, pig. I'll look his name up before I edit and put it on the screen because it's really bugging me. It's bugging me so much I'm almost tempted to stop recording, go and get my tablet and look it up. Anyway, yeah, what was I saying? Stop trying to think of the singer, Catherine, it doesn't matter. And concentrate on what you're saying. Yeah, so home, me, forever home. Yeah, I was trying to calculate how many places I've actually lived in my life, how many places I've called home. And it's quite a lot. I'll sit with a piece of paper. I kept losing count, and you know, I kept jumping forward, and then realising that I'd forgotten some, and then going back and losing count. So I need to sit with a pencil and paper and calculate. But it's quite a lot, and even in the last 20 years, I've lived in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places, I think. This is the 6th. Not counting, you know, like I stayed with my friend in the summer for 6 weeks, not counting that, but places where, you know, my name was on where I officially lived, if you see what I mean. So that's 6 in the last 20 years. And some people, if they are travelling for work, or their parents or their partner or whatever, you know, people with parents in the forces I know often end up living in all different places. Quite a lot. And that wasn't me, but anyway, I'll tell you next time how many places I've lived. So, and my parents lived from when I was about 17, about the time I was dumped by that boy to that song. It was actually really mean because we were at what we used to call a disco, I don't know what they call them these days, and he asked me to dance, and we had been kind of going out, and he came and asked me to dance, you know, the slow dances as they called them, and it was that song, and I kind of had a feeling that he was going off me, and so I was quite pleased to be asked to dance, and while we were dancing he said, listen to the words of this song, and then he looked at me, probably thought he was being all moody and James Deanish, and then he marched off the dance floor and left me standing there like a chump. Yeah, that still quite upsets me now. So yeah, so it kind of ruined that song for me. Anyway, enough about that. His loss, shall I say. Good riddance. But anyway, it got me thinking, the idea of home, of what home might mean. And, you know, some of us might live in the same place all our lives, and others of us might travel about more. It just varies, doesn't it, depending on our lives. But I would be very interested to hear, as we go through February with the theme of home, what home might mean to you. Home might be people, home might be obviously a physical place, it might be more than just the building or the house. It might be an area or a country, or, you know. And then that got me to thinking about, what does home mean for me? And I'm reading a novel, rereading a novel actually, by, it's an English woman from Manchester. I think her most famous book is called Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. And this isn't that, this is another book called Why Be Happy When You Can Be Normal. And it's an autobiography. And she had a very traumatic upbringing, and left home at 16, which is very young, and stayed in all kinds of different places from there on until she, you know, became a published writer. And there's a passage in the book which I would read to you, except for it's in my bedroom, about she bought a small rug when she was 16, and everywhere she then ended up living, she put the rug down on the floor, and it was like a little, that was her home. Her home was wrapped up in that rug, so everywhere she put that rug. So that's what made me think about the, you know, the wherever I lay my hat thing. I will get the passage and read it to you in a subsequent week when we're into February. But I just wanted to, you know, talk about it already. I'm not going to give any spoilers about what we'll actually be stitching, or what I'll be stitching. You know, you're not obliged to do what I do. But just so you could maybe just start thinking about, you know, if you want to, what home means to you. When you think of home, what, you know, what do you think of? For me, I have to make myself be deliberately, my instinct is to be even with my stitching, and especially when I'm blanket stitching. I don't know why that is. I have to consciously make myself go this way and that way and vary the lengths and everything. I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to do here, because I didn't close my circle. I've got this jump. I think I might just stitch up to it. I should really have started here, but you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So I think I'm going to end off there. Pull that a bit tight. Yeah, don't pull your loops too tight, like I just did. And do I need to end off now? I'll just jump across. I'll work my way through the backing and come out down there somewhere. And carry on round till I meet back up with where I started from. I can get my needle through. And again, I've got this fluffy edge here. So now I have to decide what to do, whether to just stitch over it or whether to hop down a bit. I think I'm going to hop down a bit actually. Oh, and yes, and Fred had another misadventure. He's okay, but I had to take him to the vet again on Monday. I'm just going to have a sip of my tea again, because otherwise it'll be cold, and it's tea, and you know I don't mind it cold, but it's nicer hot. I'll put it that side. Yeah, he came in on Saturday night, of course, it was Saturday night. Because Saturday night's alright for fighting, isn't it? Is that some? I think so. And his leg was swollen. I mean, it must have happened earlier, but I hadn't seen a wound or anything. His front left leg was swollen. Quite a lot. So I examined it, and I saw, you know, if I parted the fur, that there were 2 little puncture wounds, which is a cat bite, generally. In this part of the world. In other parts of the world you might fear it's a snake. So I had a tiny bit left of the painkiller that he'd been prescribed last time, so I gave him some of that, and I gave him a litter box and closed the cat flap. And he hates the cat flap being closed, but anyway, he was fine Saturday night because the weather was so awful. You know, he stayed in quite happily, but then on Sunday it had gone down a bit. I'm going to talk about abscesses again. Like I said before, let's just say the abscess had started to vacate his body. So that was a relief, because what the vet had said last time was, you know, if they do that, then there's not much that can go wrong apart from infection. So anyway, I knew that I still wanted to take him to the vet, but I didn't have to call on the Sunday and get, you know, have to pay emergency rates. So I called first thing Monday morning, and excuse me, they're only 5 minutes up the road. They said bring him straight away. They're brilliant there. And the vet saw him and helped it along a bit more while I stood well out of the way. I'm sorry if you're squeamish. Just go somewhere else in your mind. I'm finished now. I won't talk about it anymore. But he gave him antibiotics and some more of the anti-inflammatory painkiller stuff. And I have given him a litter box, but I have had to open the cat flap because he's a nightmare if he's shut in. And the funny thing is, I unlocked the cat flap, and I thought, well, I'll leave the litter box, and then he's got the choice. You know, he doesn't have to go out if he doesn't want to. And he didn't go out, but he just sat by the cat flap. So I don't know if he's looking for that other cat, or whether it's because of the weather, or he just doesn't like the idea of not being able to get out. I don't know. So anyway, so he's on his medication again. So I'm having to put the pills down his little throat morning and night, and the painkillers are liquid, so I just squirt that on. He has a little cat food pouch in the morning. He's one of the 8 out of 10 cats. So I'm coming around here to my circle, so I'm going to have to start angling a bit so that my stitches carry on round my circle. So I will have to either jump or cross my fluff. I think I'm going to cross my fluff, if that's a sentence that makes sense at all. Cross my line of fluffy edge. I'm just going to tease about with my fluff to make sure it goes where I want it. But so while I was sitting in the vet's, because I was excuse me again, while I was there a little bit early, him and Stella both are on a weekly plan, so I pay a monthly plan. Sorry, I pay so much a month, and that covers their flea treatment, their wormers, and their annual vaccinations. And an annual health check, and I think they can have their nails clipped as well. Not that that is something that either of them need. You know, trimmed, I don't mean anything surgical, just trimmed. I mean, Stella goes to the dog groomer and she does it, but... I saw that there was another level up where you pay a bit more a month, and then their consultations for the year are free. Any consultations for any illness or accident, not the medication that may be prescribed, but the consultation. So when I'd seen the vet and I came out and I was going to pay, I asked about it, and the young woman, I shouldn't say girl, but to me she was a girl. She was probably in her 20s, but I don't mean it in a derogatory way. Said that you only need to have 2 consultations in a year to make up the difference that you pay, you know? So it's worth, if you see the vet twice a year, you've broken even. So I thought, well, since that's been twice in the last few weeks that he's had a set to with this cat, and my neighbour says she's seen him and this cat yowling at each other. This other cat that lives over and down a bit. So I'm pretty sure it is that cat, another boy cat. But maybe it was worth it, so I did upgrade. Oh, and that's broken. What's broken? Oh, my thread's... What's happened there? Where's that come from? still got 2 strands. It must have come off the end. I'm just going to cut my tail so that they're both the same length so that I don't accidentally stitch on with anyone. But he's absolutely fine. His leg is almost back to normal this morning, and he's a couple of days into his antibiotics. And I've left the litter tray, although it is dry now, but I think maybe I'll just do that for a while. I won't lock the cat flap because he turns into a caged beast, you know. He really goes to all the windows. He comes and runs up and down and jumps, and he just really freaks out, and then he goes and digs at the cat flap, you know, like he can dig his way out, and he's just really not happy about being shut in. So I thought, well, I'll leave it unlocked. His leg is not, you know, an open wound or anything. I'll leave the cat flap unlocked, but I'll leave him a litter tray. So the choice is his. So this morning he's used the litter tray and he's now sleeping on my bed. But yeah, he's fine. I just wish he wouldn't fight. She'd just keep away from him. But again, it was on his front leg, so he's obviously standing and fighting. He's not running, because otherwise the wounds are on their back legs if they're trying to get away. I do think he is quite feisty, but I don't like him being hurt. It's lovely to see all the different words that you came up with last week in the Facebook group and on Instagram. And I'm pretty sure that I will be putting more words in other places. I just like the idea of having words, almost like it's a journal cloth or an autobiography of sorts, maybe. An autobiography, the graphy part of it is written. I wonder, an autobiostitchery. Would that make sense? I'm just trying to think of a word that means autobiography, but stitching instead of writing. If you've got any better ideas than autobiostitchery, which is a bit of a mouthful, then please share. And yesterday I did... Actually, I might show you. Not yesterday, a couple of days ago. I started a doodle. I've been watching Creation Cece. I think I mentioned her when I did the neurographic art in my weekly journal. And she's got some lovely doodle videos, where she doodles, she paints and draws, and she talks a bit at the beginning to tell you what she's doing, but then she puts music on, and then you can just watch her. And I know not everyone likes music, but her drawing is so beautiful and so inspiring that I had my watercolours out because I'd been doing something else, trying to paint a flower, which is not fit yet to be seen. But anyway, that's for a future week in my journal. I've been having a little practice, a little sneaky practice. So yeah, so I'd watched her, I think it was a recent video, I'm not completely sure, but it was basically putting some watercolour down just in some colours that you like and just blobbing it on, and quite wet, and letting it, you know, work into each other, or the colours work into each other, and then looking for shapes with a pen. And my work is what I've done is very inspired by her. And drawing around the shapes and then going in and doodling, and then the next stage after that will be to go in with more paint and darken up some of the colours. But it was, I thought, instead of sitting in the evening doing my knitting, I did finish my purple jumper that I showed you in last time's Park Home Life. I have finished that. I'm not wearing it now, but I'll show you it at one point. And so instead of sitting and knitting or crocheting and watching something on the telly, I thought I might go and sit and do that. Spend my evening doing that. And it was lovely, really lovely. And actually, I went to bed I mean, I'm always calm when I go to bed, I don't mean that, but much more relaxed than if I'd been watching something. Because although I tend not to watch things that are, you know, agitating you or getting you all riled up, as they say, certainly not at bedtime, still to, you know, to spend the evening doing something creative like that, I'm going to try and sneak in here with my knot if I can. Quite a long way. Can I get there? Yes. Yeah, it was a nice thing to do before bedtime. And at one point my son called, so I was chatting with him at the same time. Because, you know, I do that with both of them. We have chats, but we're both doing things at the same time, you know. So have chatting like as if they're in the room, so not constantly chatting, but that's nice. So I'm just going to do that all the way around, probably a couple of times, and then there's one final thing I want to do. So I think I'm going to go away and do that, and because that's going to take me some time. And when I've done that, I'll come back and show you the next thing I'm going to do. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, I've gone round 3 times. I hope you can see okay and no shadows because it's quite a bit later in the day. You can probably see it more clearly on the darker areas. Another thing I did, if the legs got a bit close together, instead of just going through one leg and making the blanket stitch, I would go through 2 legs in a row. I'm trying to see if there's one to show you. Of course I can't see one now. So, you know, as you come up and you go, you thread your needle through the leg to make the next blanket stitch. If you think you're too close to the next one, then just go thread through the next leg and then make your blanket stitch. And then I just lay the thread on just to audition, you know, where it's going to come up. We'll just play about with it really. But you can see they're super wonky, they're all different sizes and shapes. I hope I'm holding it in the right place now. So what I started doing, I've only done a couple because it's going to take me quite a lot of time, is then coming off each little leg of my last round, I'm going to do stem stitch. So the finished effect will be that it kind of radiates from the centre. So I thought I'd show you here on this red wool. So I've just got still the same 2 strands of silk. So I'm going to come up just at the very base of the leg and then stem stitch. You take your first stitch, the full length of stitch that you want to do, so I guess that's just under 1/4 of an inch, and you work from left to right if you're right-handed. So then you go in and then you come back up with the needle halfway along that space, so that when you pull up, your next stitch overlaps the first stitch by about half its length. And I always keep the thread towards you. So then the next one, you take the length of your stitch that you want, and from now on it's easier because you don't have to judge anything. You just come back up in the hole of the previous stitch. I think if you can't see very clearly here or you're not sure, if you go and look in the stitches tutorials, I think stem stitch is in there, or it might be in the crazy patchwork, but hopefully you can see clear enough. So you go forward your length of stitch, and then you come back out of the hole of the previous stitch, and it just gives a really nice, almost like a rope line. And I'm going to weave, I'm not going to do straight lines, I'm going to wiggle, just going to wiggle them gently. You don't want to wiggle too much or you'll get little side shoots of your previous stitch, unless that's a look you like. You could also just do a back stitch or a chain stitch or any other kind of stitch, but I just thought I'd do stem stitch because I quite enjoy doing it. So that's what I'm going to do basically, and I think that's probably all I'm going to do at this stage until we start joining to subsequent months, and then I might then do some stitching across the joins with the other pieces. So that was it for this week. Apologies again for the initial you know, not being able to see me. Yeah, I still have to play with this camera setup. I'm not used to working with a tripod. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll put that in there so I can wave at you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy stitching on your piece, and next week we'll be into February. And so I'll see you then. Bye bye.